good evening. Unbelievably, we're back. There's a look at what we saw this evening, and we've had a ton of rain here in Texas. We're definitely getting off to a wet start to the year, and we've got a lot of stratus overhead there, about 1,000 feet off the ground. If I could get that drone up into the clouds, that would be awesome. Maybe one of these days we'll have a drone. I think maybe $300 or $400 would buy one of those. I'd be glad to send one up into the clouds if I had one, but I'm limited to about 200 feet on this one. So anyway, let's check out what's happening on the charts. And while you look at that, let me look at the mixing board. It's been a while since I've used this, so I'm making sure that the channels are going out to the right places. And I think it looks okay. Okay, so you can all let me know if you're not hearing anything. Not that you would hear my instructions, but anyway, there we go. High pressure has settled in, and this is the first time I've looked at the weather since Colorado last weekend. So we're kind of building up a picture, how we build up. This is how we do the forecast here, starting with the basics. And I'm doing this beginning with the surface chart. And you can see high pressure is covering much of the southern U.S. And let me bring up my tool here, get that going. You can see that the pressures are not too high, only about 1020 to 1024 millibars. And a couple weeks ago when we were looking at high pressure coming out of Canada, we were looking at pressures around 1030 to 1040 millibars. So this is fairly typical, fairly, what am I looking for? Fairly mediocre pressure. And then we look up in Canada and we've got low pressure for a change. So there's a low right there in Alberta. Very, very weak low. High pressure in northern Manitoba. And it looks like we've got maybe the Canadian storm track going. There's one frontal low right there. And another one over Quebec. And this one's got a bit of a occluded front. So quite a bit of wintry weather there in Quebec. And then working down the front, this has the definite look of a Pacific front. And then we track that down into Texas. We've got the tropical moisture close at hand from New Orleans to off the Houston coast. Look at those dew points coming up to 73 there off of Galveston. So we're going to have to start thinking about severe weather here soon. And then looking up at the Pacific Northwest. Looks like another Pacific system coming in right there. All right, let me check the chat and make sure things are looking good. Wow, 18 people. I figured I'd be looking at this and we'd have like 3 people after that long delay. Okay, sounds like the audio is good. Audio, video rolling good. Yeah, the reason I asked is not only because I've been gone, but also I've been trying to get a new Windows 10 system going, and I've been pulling out disk drives and messing up the configuration. So glad to hear things are going okay. Okay, let's bring up the usual products. And that looks about like what we saw on the surface chart there. The one thing that kind of strikes, that not strikes, but stands out is this right here. Looks like a very strong cold air mass coming into Washington and Oregon right there. 522 decameter thickness, which is definitely very low. Remember the 540 line, which is located right there. That tends to be the cutoff between rain and snow. So we're going like 3 lines into that around Portland and Seattle. Definite cold air mass, and let's see just how cold that is. Probably not going to see anything too unusual because, again, it's, you know, this is a Pacific air mass here. Yeah, 40. That's definitely kind of mild right there. We're looking right there, 40, 42. But it is a bit blustery there, west winds coming in. Most of the cold air is actually aloft. And let me see if I can pull that up. Let me go to the soundings. We'll bring up the Quileute sounding. And look at that. Very steep lapse rate. And this is showing that, yeah, the cold air is there, especially up in that part of the column right there. So definitely unstable, and you can see that if we were lifting a parcel, if we had the slightest bit of sunshine coming down, say we warm up to maybe 41 degrees, we get enough for a little bit of CAPE there. That's probably about maybe 300 to 400 CAPE, enough for some showers, weak cumulonimbus clouds. And then we got this tropopause very low, only about 22,000 feet up. So if you're taking a flight out of Seattle or Portland, you're up in this stuff, and you're probably breathing in a little bit of ozone there. And there's that west wind coming in behind that system. Now another way we can take a look at this is with the cross-section. Let me see if I can get this working. This is a kind of a new feature I've been trying to get working in digital atmosphere. I'm going to draw a line between around Quileute to, say, Sioux Falls, kind of like that. And let's see if we can do that cross-section. Okay, you see the line comes up right there. Little memory error. Okay. I think it still may work there. Anyway, I've got some more work to do here on this. I'm looking to build some interesting features into this. Let's see, what should we start with? Potential temperature. There we go. We can look at the low tropopause right there. You see that right there above Seattle. And then we go out to the Dakotas, and that's out in this region here. Tropopause a little bit higher. Kind of a very gradual slope there. And we see the cold air mass right here. You see how this bulges out? You can think of these layers like blankets on your bed. And where you have a cold air mass, that's going to be like a body laying in the bed, pushing the surfaces upward. And you can see that as we go out to the Pacific Northwest right here, the potential temperatures come down, 298, 296, 294, and this is getting to be a very cold air mass right there. And since the potential temperature rises with height, it couldn't fall with height, or you would have explosive instability everywhere. It increases with height, so naturally we would have the cold air mass here, and where the surfaces are low, that's the warm air mass right there. So a very warm air mass there over the Central Plains right in that region. Now if we look at temperatures, which you're probably more familiar with, that's just if you hold a mercury thermometer out the window. 500 millibars right here, that's about 18,000 feet. So you can see it's about minus 24 over Seattle. You fly it over the Rockies, it warms to about 18. And then once you're over the plains, it's about minus 10 off in this region right here. There, that's probably a little bit better. Sorry about that. And another thing that we do see here is what looks like kind of a isothermal layer right up here. That's going to be the stratosphere. Everything above that is the stratosphere right there. So pretty much everywhere the temperature is falling with height. So this is not very useful because everywhere, even if you look at Asia or Europe, this is all going to look the same. It's going to have a similar structure. But if we look at potential temperature, that shows us important changes that we need to be looking at. Now another thing we can look at is the wind plots relative to the section. And you probably remember this. We showed this a couple times earlier. Here the flow is pretty much, I would say pretty much tangent to the plane. So it's moving straight left to right there. And there's some pretty strong winds over Seattle right there. But where we have these squares, it's flowing into the chart. So basically from your eyes into the chart. So it's heading more northeasterly right in this region right here. And you can see down here it's also flowing into the chart, but it's coming out of the east. So that's indicating a southeast to northwest flow right here. Maybe a little bit of return flow starting on the plains right there. Okay, relative humidity. Pretty good humidity right there on the east coast or the west coast. Drier air in the Rockies. And then we can look at mixing ratio, which is kind of analogous to dew point. And you can see in the plains some fairly strong moisture or stout moisture, high dew points. This is probably 50s dew points, I would think. Let's see, I'm showing 19. I wonder where I'm getting that value of 12 to 14. I'm going to have to look more at this because I think this may be off here. 12 grams per kilogram, I really don't think that's what we're seeing. Anyway, this is kind of a work in progress, and I'm going to be trying to get this geared up before spring. So I want to really put this to use. And then lapse rate, let's check that out. Looks pretty stratified. It's about what we normally see this time of year. I think this lapse rate thing here, that's going to show some interesting features with systems coming in from the Pacific. And we'll see some of these higher values coming across the Rockies, and we'll check some of that out as we get into storm season. Anyway, let me keep things moving along here. I just thought we'd take a look at that because that's kind of an interesting way of visualizing the atmosphere. And let's check that out on the soundings. We'll look at Rapid City. I'm really curious where those high mixing ratios came from. That's very strange. I mean, I can see some higher values here, but to get 10 to 12, we need to be on this part of the sounding for moisture. Rapid City, some pretty good instability in that region in the lower part of the atmosphere, so that's indicating some modification of the air mass. And then above that, we've got a little bit more of a warm air mass above that. And let's head down to Texas, and we'll try Shreveport. Tropical moisture coming northward. Dew points in the upper 40s there around Shreveport. A little bit of a dry layer around 5 to 10,000, and then quite a bit of moisture from 10,000 up to about 30,000 feet right there. And very strong winds. The southern stream of the jet looks like it's definitely there in Louisiana. However, not a whole lot of moisture there. The sounding is not leaning over to the left very much. This here, by the way, this is probably what we would see with a front down to the south. You can see it's got the look of an inversion, and the moisture line follows it over to the right too. And the winds appear to be turning around right there, so this is probably a warm front about to get started up on the Texas coast. Let me replot everything here. Let's see, yeah, that's my compiler. Okay, there's the Texas Gulf Coast. There's the fronts, and you can see right now it's stationary. That's pretty much what we would expect with this light and variable flow. And when it turns around to a warm front, we would see this become more southerly. So the plots would be looking kind of like that right there. So looks like the wave is still down around Corpus Christi, Port Aransas, but that's actually going to move up the front overnight most likely. And once we get on the back side of that low pressure area right there, then we'll see the flow start to come around maybe to the out of the north a little bit. So I think we're probably going to see a bit of a cold push, and then the warm front will probably come up from the south. So it looks like with this low down there, this is going to be probably initially a cold push and then warm front coming up. All right, let's look at the rest of the charts and see what's going on. We looked at that. So this would place our frontal boundary along the Gulf Coast right there. Pretty good contrast between the Gulf Coast and Minnesota there. So this is all basically a frontal zone right in that region. And looks like possibly an old front down around Baja California, and then the new one coming onshore in Northern California right there. So I'm thinking the fronts are looking something like that right there. Okay. I got to get up to speed with my pacing here. We're like 17 minutes in, and I still haven't even got to the satellite. All right, here's the upper air chart. 26 at 0Z. This is new data. So showing a pretty good wave there in the Great Plains. Very large long wave offshore. Long wave ridge. Across the Rockies right there, so possibly a little bit of warm weather around Denver. Well, I would say warmed up a little bit. Looks like there's a cold air mass. We're still kind of moving out. 42 there at Pueblo. And then let's see, what else do we got going on? Subtropical jet. We're going to have to go up to 250 for that. And one good way to find the subtropical jet is to just take a cross section and kind of look at your wind speeds. Got 100 knots right there at Topeka. 120. 115. 115. And 100, and then it starts falling off. So what I'm looking for is possibly where the values start coming up a little bit, because sometimes you get kind of like a double barrel appearance. And that can really clue you into where a subtropical jet might be. I can see that with these higher values down along the Gulf Coast and the slight anticyclonic flow down in that region, I think that's probably what we got going on, maybe something a little bit like that. I think we've probably bought a little bit of subtropical jet. Yeah, here's a segment right there. That's going to be the subtropical jet coming up from Baja California and meeting up with a polar front jet. All right, let me see what else we should look at. So we've got a pretty thorough idea what's going on. Sometimes I look at this chart to find other boundaries. And this will help us out during the spring for sure. There's the Gulf Coast front right there. And then the Pacific Northwest fronts, you can definitely see this one here. And I can kind of see where the warm front might be. Might be looking in that area right there from about Elko up to around Burns. So already we're able to kind of refine the position on that boundary. Okay, we can do a region by region to catch up a little bit. And this takes us a little bit into the forecast. Well, we've got a very strong westerly flow there. And it looks like that's pretty persistent for the next couple of days. And lots of cold air across the northern Rockies right there. And by cold air, I'm talking about these purples. Those are temperatures of around 0 to 10. Southwestern U.S. Let's check that out. Strong northerly flow, so we've probably had some Pacific air come from that region. The San Joaquin Valley starting out with northwest winds. So it looks like definitely has been frontal passage in that area. And looks like maybe a little bit of fog or stratus, perhaps. This is 16Z. This is this morning. And, yeah, it looks like a patch of something right in that area. So a little bit of moisture. That's going to indicate air mass of Pacific origin. A lot more humid rather than polar air coming in from the Great Basin area. And let's check things out heading into tomorrow and the next day. Not much going on. Pick up some southwesterly flow. That's probably some of the tropical air coming back. And then, yeah, I can see the some pretty strong southerly flow there in Arizona by Tuesday. All right, let's check out Texas. Wow, we can definitely see that frontal boundary down in that area. There you can see the time. Okay, frontal boundary. It's pretty cut and dry. We'll see what happens to that overnight. Looks like it's quasi-stationary. And yeah, the wave. Let's see if we can find that. I can see it. See that cyclonic turning of the wind right there. This is 20Z. This is a few hours ago. And if we go forward, looks like around 1Z. It's right there around Beaumont. Possibly another low down around Corpus Christi. And then as that low in Louisiana moves off to the east, you can see we're pushing that cold front to the south right there. See that kicking offshore right in that area. So that's a little stable wave moving along the front. And 20-knot flow coming in from the north overnight into tomorrow morning. And lots of high pressure across North Texas into Missouri there. So it looks like kind of a cool pattern for the next day or two. And then now we start picking up the southerly flow starting in the Rio Grande and Pecos Valley area. So I'm looking for a surge of southerly flow, and that looks to be established around Tuesday. So that's got the potential to bring moisture northward into Texas and the Gulf opening up. Starting to get into spring here. Okay, and we'll check out the Midwest and then the Southeast U.S. Let me check for drops. 594 drop frames at some point. That's about 10 seconds. Not sure what might have caused that. Anyway, we'll go ahead and move forward. We got the southwesterly flow starting. That's kind of a warm pattern there. So that's getting established overnight. So it looks like a bit of a warm up there for the Midwest. Coming up to 50s in Illinois and Indiana. And even warmer for Tuesday. Almost up to 60 there around St. Louis. And looks like another front coming on the horizon, but only 30s up there in Minnesota, so not too bad. And then we'll look at the southeast U.S. There's that frontal boundary kind of becoming quasi-stationary. There's that next push right there coming in for Monday. And then for Monday night, it looks like that. And then for Tuesday, I guess that's parking across the Titusville and Orlando area. Looks like it's somewhere in that area. You can see 61 degrees there at Jacksonville, contrasted with 79 there at Vero Beach. Okay, so that's the region by region, and that'll be very interesting as we get into storm season. We'll use some more of that and track the fronts that are coming across the Rockies. Okay, I haven't updated the polar orbiter. However, this should be updated. Let's see what's happening with the hemispheric. Looks like we got some blank frames there. Well, we've definitely got a very persistent vortex across Canada. You see that right there? Looks like Europe's kind of in a warm pattern there, maybe a little bit cool in the southern European region. Yeah, very high heights there in Scandinavia and Svalbard. Whereas here in the U.S., we've got the cold pole right there. So 480 decameter low right there around Mold Bay and Cambridge Bay. And a couple of pretty good waves moving through that flow right there. And here comes another one, and another one coming off Japan. So these do have the capability to, I think they have the potential to break down that ridge a little bit, and those could track on into the southern U.S. I think that's something I'm going to look for right there, is more height falls in the western U.S. over the next week or so. Okay, we looked at a lot of the upper air charts so far. We'll take that onto the satellite. There's what's going on right now. There's our outgoing system that gave us all the rain here in Texas. A lot of clearing in behind that, ahead of that ridge in the Rockies. And then there's that system up in the northwestern U.S. coming in. Okay, let's check out things on chat. Let me move this so I can read. I got Megan John here and Fun with Tech. Ryan Toomey's saying it's been a while. Megan John, 25 degrees, many inches of snow up there in Minnesota. Hello to Ron Chalfant. Thanks, I appreciate that. And Megan John, pregnant with his second. Congrats there, that's great news. Awesome. Ryan Toomey's talking about nasty weather, severe weather last night through Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Tornado damage reports, yeah. This is around the tail end of severe weather season down in the Gulf Coast area. Adam Davis reporting his yard is a swamp after all the rain. Andrew Hotchkiss mentioning UAVs limited to 400 feet. Okay, that's good to know. Everybody reporting the audio and video looks good. And I just had my page update with a whole bunch of content. I'm going to have to just kind of browse through this real quick. Got Electric Dog and Sue M. Carl Berghoff. Ryan reporting east winds. 31 tornado warnings. Good grief. Megan John saying, we missed you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Carl Berghoff's got some hoarfrost pictures. Ryan Toomey's watched me last week at Chaser Con. Yeah, you got to see me without my coffee in the morning. I was not really ready to speak at that thing, but had to do it. Interesting topics posted. Yeah, we are getting close to severe weather season, and I'm planning on making some changes in here, getting the cameras set up, and I want to get an analysis desk set up. And I'm planning to set up a table here so you can kind of see some hand analysis as we have these severe weather days take place. And I need to put up some more of this acoustic tile stuff and get things set up. I've got kind of an idea in my mind of how I want things to look, and then we can bring back, you know, the cameras and everything. David Holcomb is here, and Mr. Manlet, Fun with Tech, 26 watching. I don't understand why we take 2 weeks off, and instead of people disappearing, we have more than our usual numbers. It's very strange. Michael O, hoping for one good winter push. Indeed, it's possible. Justin Polium, boundary's been hanging around Houston. Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, tornadoes last night. Ron Chalfant says don't forget the like button. And, oh, Megan John, good grief. Yeah, I'm sorry, I keep looking at that and thinking that's John Megan subconsciously. I'm sorry about that. Okay, Megan John, female. Okay. Yeah, you'll just have to put up with my mistakes there. Sorry about that. Anyway, excellent, Ron Chalfant. Love your program, Tim. Thanks, I appreciate that. Okay, so you got a good look at the satellite picture. Let's look at the Pacific. And I've got the water vapor imagery for this. And you can see the fetch there with the subtropical jet coming into Mexico. Remember how we drew that on there. Typically, we find the subtropical jet on the poleward side of these cirrostratus bands, especially where you have this transverse banding like you see right here. That's a good indicator that there's jet stream action there. And then over here, we've got the descending side of the subtropical jet, and this is the ascending side right there. So even without upper air observations, we can kind of use this to pin down exactly where things are. And then we go further out into the Pacific, and we've got pretty impressive system there north of Hawaii. And this is when we can start seeing the Kona lows down there in Hawaii. They get some very major, they're kind of like cutoff systems that kind of drift around there, the islands, and they can give snow to the higher peaks there on the big island. However, this one looks like it's progressing pretty well, and that's probably going to link up with the westerlies up in this region. So Pacific definitely looking kind of stormy. And this is probably a good time to, let's see what's going on here. This is the heights and vorticity. Okay. So we've got those troughs and ridges there. Let's move forward. Yeah, see, with this slight northwesterly pattern here, that's going to encourage these troughs to dig into the western U.S., and that one is definitely doing it right there. And it's also shearing off into a cutoff low down there around Ron's area. So it looks like an unstable pattern there for the Los Angeles and Southern California area. That opens up around late in the week, Wednesday, Thursday, and that'll be approaching Texas. And then we have another one coming in, and it's got the potential to do the same thing here. And we'll have to pick up on that with the GFS. So let's look at the GFS run, starting with the upper air. This is 300 millibars. Okay, so this one digs on in. There it is. And you can see the subtropical jet right down there. And here's the next wave coming in for Thursday. That's also digging in. However, the upstream ridge is amplifying pretty well. That could start blocking these troughs a little bit. We'll have to see what happens here. Yeah, it breaks down that next ridge pretty well. So this next trough moves on in. So we're going to have kind of a stormy pattern here on the west coast for the next week or two. So, yeah, looks like a split flow pattern there on the west coast. They're getting kind of a break there up in the British Columbia region. And let's see how things look later on. Here comes one little trough around Thursday next week, the 8th. And another trough, so it's just going to be kind of a succession of Pacific fronts and upper level troughs coming in from the west, which is kind of a big change when they were coming in from the north a couple weeks ago. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the surface chart and see what's going to happen here. All right, moving forward, here's our first Pacific system coming in. So tomorrow that's going to move through Nevada and Northern California, through Sacramento and San Francisco there. And we see the development of a wave right there around Bishop, Tonopah, Death Valley, out in that area. So that'll definitely be crossing the Rockies. We can see a lee side trough getting started right there in advance of that system. So around Tuesday, that's going to be crossing the Rockies. Not going to see too much on the surface chart there, but probably by Wednesday and Thursday, yeah, can definitely see it gaining steam here. Looks like our warm front comes north. I think that's I don't know, I might put that warm front a little further south, maybe something like that. So this is how things look Wednesday morning. Pacific system coming out of West Texas. And this is when we have the potential for thunderstorms. And yeah, Wednesday afternoon, there it is. Looks like some of that tropical moisture flowing north and linking up with that Pacific system. So we'll have some weather to look at. And behind it, there's a Canadian outbreak coming in right there. So putting it all together, looking something like that right there. Generally, it's where the low-level jet links crosses the warm front. That's where your severe weather tends to be enhanced. So we're looking at Arkansas, northern Louisiana, northern Mississippi, some potential for severe weather there overnight, Wednesday night. And there it goes. And then for Thursday, for the webcast, it's going to move pretty quickly to the east. Already on the east coast there. High pressure following in behind, and then another Pacific system. This is going to be the second one. I mean, obviously this is going to be out on the plains around Sunday or Monday. So it goes through the same sequence right there. And let's see when this emerges. Looks like this one kind of rides a little bit further north over the top of this Canadian ridge coming southward. That's kind of what it looks like to me there. Yeah, it looks like maybe that outbreak right there in the Mississippi River Valley. That's probably what that is. Let me backtrack that. Yeah, that works out to about what that is. All right, so our next outbreak will be mostly Canadian, but there will be a little bit of Pacific upper air energy coming across Monday night, a week from now. And there's a little bit of severe weather there in Georgia. All right, let's see the next system upstream. That's around the 8th and 9th. That comes across Texas, but this is 288 hours out. It does push a pretty good chunk of cold air southward. So it looks like we are mixing in a little bit of Canadian air. I guess that polar vortex is still producing a little bit of a cold air factory. And it looks like towards the end, a 1040 millibar high pushes southward. That may clear out some of the tropical moisture there in the Gulf of Mexico. And let's see how it looks towards the end. 13th of March. Well, anyway, that's what it's forecasting. Probably more. Another chance of winter weather maybe somewhere around the U.S. around mid-March, and we can definitely be in a wintry pattern as late as April. In fact, if you want to go all the way to May 3rd of 1978, they had a winter storm, dumped about 10 inches of snow in the northern Texas Panhandle, so you might want to look that one up in the daily weather maps at NOAA Library. May 3rd of 78. Pretty amazing winter storm affected that area right there. Okay, well that's, I think, about all I got for tonight. Let me just take a quick look. Let me see if I have the anomaly product. I think I have the anomaly products, but let me check out the dew points since I have that up. I just want to see what the dew points are running down there in the Gulf. Looks like this purple here, that's 70s. And then the blue is 60s. Yeah, there's some pretty good moisture lurking down to the south, but not a whole lot of it makes it up north. And it looks like this next outbreak, yeah, you see these north winds out there in the Gulf of Mexico. If that persists for more than a couple days, that'll push the moisture all the way down to the Caribbean and makes it that much harder to get it back up into the southern U.S. So, anyway, 60s for Texas, dew points, 60s for Louisiana also during the warm phase of these systems, and yeah, like right there, that's the warm phase of the March 10th through 13th system. But 1040 high coming down, and that can definitely push that system all the way down into the southern tropics. Okay, well, I think that's about all I got for tonight. I appreciate y'all watching the webcast. Let me take one last look at chat. Yeah, thanks for signing in tonight and checking out the webcast. 50 in February, no good for me. Yeah, March is close at hand, so we'll be brushing up on our severe weather knowledge, and I'll probably try to take us through some of the latest journal papers. I want to kind of go over some of the stuff there. Maybe we can look at the monthly weather review and weather and forecasting, and check out some of the articles that might help us this spring. We'll take a look at that. Anyway, yeah, let me get the closeout music going. Forgot to get that queued up. Turn the volume down so I don't blast you. And there we go. All right, thanks. I appreciate you all watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.